You're probably wondering why a white guy on the internet is attempting to make Jamaican beef patties. Well, you clicked on the video, so technically, wouldn't that mean you're interested in seeing a white guy make Jamaican beef patties? Got you there, didn't I? Well, I was thinking about it, and it's pretty much just like a hot pocket, right? So it's that super flavorful, punchy in the face beef surrounded by that perfectly baked, almost like pie crust with a little bit of like a yellow orange hue. They also make cheese versions, stuff some processed cheese in there. I think it's time for me to stop talking and simply just get down to business. Let's turn up the heat. Start with this beautiful dough. The first ingredient is going to be 1 3/4 cups of flour. Try and get it all in there without making a huge mess. I'm just going to clean up these edges. And now, arguably the most important ingredient, 1 teaspoon of turmeric. That spice is the ingredient that's going to add that yellow color. There's one more, and that's 1/2 teaspoon of curry powder, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and 1/2 tablespoon of sugar. That curry powder was thrown in just as a functional ingredient, just to add a little bit of flavor to this dough. The salt's in there to round out that flavor, and the sugar's in there to counteract the spicy pepper that's going to be going in the meat mixture. Give this a pulse. You're probably questioning this color, but until the water gets added, this dough will remain white. Get a 1/2 cup of butter, cold, and cut this into portions, and add them cube by cube. Toss the top back on, and pulse, just until there's little nuggets of butter. You don't want this completely melted in. Couple bursts, and you can clearly see it's starting to come together. Now the only other ingredient, you guessed it, it's water. I've got about 1/4 cup. I'm going to add a little bit, about half, and pulse. Now this dough has come together. It's slightly tacky, and that's all I needed. So it was about roughly 1/8 cup of water until you get a consistency like Play-Doh. Now you just want to take this ball, get your plastic wrap, and roll it up. Stick this bad boy in the fridge and let it chill. That dough is slightly flavored, but this beef filling is going to be insane. The first ingredient is 1/2 an onion. Now we're just going to dice this up. The next ingredient, green onions. Now I'm using about 3 stalks of green onions. Now you can take about a 1/2 inch knob of ginger, and you can begin to peel it. Take your ginger and toss it on in to the onion party. We've also got 1 clove of garlic. Simply just give it some slices just like the ginger. And now comes the Scotch bonnet. These bad boys are native to Jamaica. It's the cousin to the habanero. Just take the tip off of the pepper and go ahead and give this a mince. When working with the Scotch bonnet or even a habanero, make sure you don't touch your eyes, any orifice. Now on top of all this goes the seasonings. If you have fresh thyme, use 2 teaspoons. If you have ground, use 1. 2 teaspoons of paprika, 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder, 1/2 teaspoon of onion powder, and a heaping 1/4 teaspoon of allspice. A nice pinch of salt, about a 1/2 teaspoon, and a couple twists of fresh pepper. Now take that lid, and we pulse. Ooh, you can smell that pepper. It's going right up my nose. You kind of want it to this consistency. If you can't get this just with your own knife and by hand, just try and get it somewhere around this. You want it to be slightly chunky. This is loaded with flavor. Now we're going to be taking this, tossing in a touch of oil, and once that oil's hot, in goes your vegetable mixture. Now you just want to cook this over medium heat for just a few minutes. You don't want this to burn and get bitter. You just want these onions and the vegetables to kind of just soften up, draw out some of that moisture. And after a couple minutes, you're gonna take a ½ pound of ground beef and toss it straight in. Marry these vegetables in with this protein. Now that that meat's in there, you can toss in a bit more salt. Now you want this meat to be moist but not wet. You kind of want it to be gooey. You want there to be moisture throughout the entire meat mixture. And the way we're gonna do that is by adding about a ½ cup of beef stock. And on top of this, to soak up that moisture, but to keep it inside the meat, we're adding a couple tablespoons of breadcrumbs. Give it a little bite. If you don't want it too spicy, but you want just a little bit right on the back of the throat, the amount of pepper that I put in is perfect. If you want it more, add more. If you want it really spicy, add the whole damn pepper. The salt level, I'm gonna add about a ½ teaspoon more. It's very close, but it's not perfect. If your meat doesn't sound like that, you've done something wrong. Now that your little bad boy is chilled, toss this onto your workstation with a little bit of flour. Now you don't want to make this too thin because then it'll break. You want it to be around 1 to 2 centimeters thick. Take a decently sized bowl and simply go around the edge, leaving a little bit of space. About 3/4 of an inch to a ½ an inch around. Now just like Play-Doh, you get all that dough around, form it back into a ball, and repeat the process. Now that your beef is chilled and your dough is formed, it's time to stuff. Place some close to you on the front third. Start with a little bit, and if you want to add more, you can add more. But you want to leave basically the same distance that you cut out. Work the meat backwards, don't move it this way, you want this lip. Now, take your cheese, toss this like that. Now, take your dough and fold it. Meet the two sides together. If you get holes, just try and close them as best as you can. Now take a fork and seal it shut. Now that they're shaped, go ahead, poke them just to allow out some of that steam. Now we're gonna egg wash these, just like our buns. Now toss these into a 350-degree oven for around 25 minutes. If you need a little longer, go 30. In they go, and out they come, hot and steamy. Let these cool to the point where you can kind of move them around and at least eat them, because I know if you were to eat these now, they would definitely burn your mouth. And look at that, a perfect Jamaican beef patty. Break this in half. Let's try that crust. The crust itself is so good. Super flaky, slightly sweet, salty. It's like a Ritz cracker. Now we're going with the meat. Wow. So good. 100% try this. Pretty simple, easy recipe. So good, 10 out of 10. Would recommend. If you enjoy these videos, give it a big fat thumbs up. Smash that subscribe button. And until next time, peace.